I want to thank you for your attentiveness to our duties and those things that we're assigned to address this evening, and thank you for your presence. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we'd like to determine a quorum. It appears at this point that we have all of our voting members save one, and so we have a quorum. And I would, at this time, ask that you give attention to the agenda for the open meeting. And I need a motion and a second if you approve of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that the agenda as written be approved. Is there any need for discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who are opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. Before you are the minutes from our open meeting of December 18th. Motion indicating your desire is needed for those.
Motion to approve the minutes.
There's a motion to approve. Can I get a second?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that the minutes of the December 18th open meeting be approved. Any need for discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion carries. Our first, first item of new business is the scope and purpose of our quarterly night meetings. I want to, first of all, say to you that we've had an opportunity to meet and do some planning and some thinking through this process. What we would like to do is to move to our quarterly night meetings starting as early as January the 29th. They will be public listening sessions. Thinking often about Dr. Temple's question with regard to how we handle public comment, I have consulted, and I believe it is in our better interest at this point, to share with the public our progress to date and somewhat of a summary position paper, and then afford the public the opportunity to make comments or make presentations. We will not be in a position to resolve every issue or even to give validity to the power of their questioning or even the factual process involved in that. But what we can do is make ourselves available to hear the public, receive the input, and then in our next and subsequent administrative planning meeting, we will either assign the task appropriately to the appropriate subcommittee, or we will make the appropriate response. Persons can be assured that their comments will be valued and listened and received. But we would do a disservice to the process if we felt as if we were in a position to answer at the time that you present your concerns or your issues. Any questions about that or that approach to the public listening session? As you will see noted, we plan to have the first on the 29th of this month, beginning at 6:30 here at this facility. Do you want to, is everybody fine with that? Well, then why don't we just solidify that with an official action, please? Can I get someone to make a motion to that effect?
Motion to have our first public listening session on January 29th at 6:30 p.m.
I second that.
Properly moved and seconded. Any need for discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. We will move forward, planning appropriately for that date. At this time, we are going to be receiving Dr. Towsell and members of his staff, as he deems appropriate, to share with us a mid-year update from the school system. I want to encourage you to listen carefully to the presentation. I believe we have shared the information and his report, and please feel free to present him with any questions or issues that you have available. Dr. Calvert.
Thank you, Chair Jones and members of the Student Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. Is this on? There's nothing I need to push? Okay. So used to a green button. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share where we are with regards to student safety and well-being in Calvert County Public Schools. As you know, I serve as the superintendent of Calvert County Public Schools. I think it's important to share, hey, why are we here? Where, number one, how did this advisory committee come? For those who do not recall, in the last academic year, school year 23-24, midway through the year, there were a lot of concerns about young people's safety and fighting, and reports of negative school climate and culture. As a result, myself, Sheriff Cox, did safety walks at all of our schools, and just to have our hand on the pulse and inspect what we expect with regards to young people's behaviors. And ultimately, we ended up here. But I had the opportunity to track our student data. Over the summer, our Board of Education implemented some, or approved some policies, very specific policies to add value to the learning environment, specifically an electronic devices policy, whereas young people are not allowed to bring their personal electronic devices to school because of the potential disruption of circumventing our wireless access to internet, using VPNs to access not only social media sites, but other inappropriate sites that cause young people to be distracted or to add to a negative school climate. In addition, dress code, with regards to dress code very specifically, young people wearing hoods on their heads. The issue with that is if young people have on a hood, you cannot see their face. So anyone with a hood in the school environment is a threat to the school environment because we cannot identify you. Therefore, you probably do not belong there because you're not following that expectation. And the very last, cell phones. The research shows, and our parents say, cell phones are a distraction. Teachers say cell phones are a distraction. So the problem is young people are not engaged in their academics. A lot of times on that cell phone, drama from social media drips into the school environment. Beef or arguments in the community drips into that school environment through text messages and instant messages on DMs on people's social media's account. So we put that policy in place. And I'm very excited to share the results. And let me tell you some very specific things. So first and foremost, the goal is to not only review the progress so far, but to promote accountability, engage our stakeholders, inform decision-making, and ultimately build trust. So I asked our Student Services Department to pull out very specific data, and I wanted to compare from August of 2023 to January 14th, yesterday of 2024, to this year, August of 2025 to January 14th of 2025. And I want you to pay very close attention. You can look at the page that got the graph, and let me note this first. If you go to attack on adult, the third column, it says 753. That's a typo. I made a mistake and hit 3. It should be 75.
I think that's right.
That was an error. Thank you, Dr. Temple, for calling that out as well. So just looking at total incidents overall, this time last year to date, there were over 5,000 incidents that were logged into our system. Right now, as we speak, there's less than 4,000. And I do believe that is because of the implementation of the policies we have in place and the extra attention we have to the school environment. So looking at class cutting from 1314 to obviously less than 1,000, 748. Disruptions reported by teachers from over 1,000 to 722. Disrespect, about 1,000 to 719. Tardiness, 351 to 222. Attack on students, 300 to 226. Attack on adults, 107 to 75. Fighting, 141, 115. Bullying, harassment, from 114 to 57. Destruction of property, 57 to 33. And tobacco and vaping increased from 87 incidents of this time last year to 105 this time this year. So what does that say to me? I personally believe, as superintendent of Calvert County Public School, we need all hands on deck with tackling this tobacco, vaping, marijuana, all of this access to not only tobacco product, but alcohol product, any type of drug product. Because when talking to young people and talking to students and talking to our parents don't want young people vaping at all, so our parents are not giving it to them. The question is, where is it coming from? Respectfully, I see the vape shops up and down the county, and I'm not sure what the law is with regards to that, to the letter, but young people are going right in there and buying them. That's from their mouths. And parents don't necessarily know about it. They're buying a handful of them, sharing it with their friends and colleagues, and it's a problem in Calvert County. So I think a community effort, I don't know if it's a campaign. I know in Calvert County, our district, myself, some members of our Board of Education saw the screening of the movie about drugs and vaping and inhalants that affect people in Calvert County. That movie that we saw, the owner of that movie gave the district access to stream that for free, and that's on all of our high school newsletters where we share out to our families. So our families want young people not vaping, but they are doing it and they're hiding it, not only in school, but they're doing it at home and in the community. So whatever we can do to signal boost the epidemic of vaping in Calvert County, I support that 120%. Why do I believe our discipline has decreased as far as frequency or the amount of incidents? I do think it's because our teachers are really, they really have classroom management, and we're giving them that autonomy and telling them that, listen, we're going to hold young people to the letter of our code of conduct, and we've been doing that each year increasingly, holding young people accountable that are outside of what the expectations are in the school. In addition to that, myself, the superintendent, has conducted something called the Code of Conduct Tours in Calvert County. So I literally go to every secondary school in Calvert County on a quarterly basis and do an all-school grade level assembly. So for example, prior to coming in here, I just left Huntingtown High School with over 1,200 students in the auditorium and gave them the Code of Conduct assembly. Upon leaving, not only was it hugs and handshakes from kids, but teachers sent me emails and walked up to me personally and said that was much needed for the student environment. And at all of our middle schools. Today I was at Windy Hill Middle School. I started my day at Windy Hill Middle School and gave them the Code of Conduct Assembly presentation as well. In addition to that, principals have been holding grade level assemblies on their own. They have the expectations in their newsletters, and we have that student handbook that we always reference that is available electronically for all of our young people. So I'm very excited to look at the decrease data-wise. So looking overall at the executive summary, Calvert County Public School experienced a significant 22% reduction in total behavioral incidents through January 14th compared to the same period in the previous school year. And I believe that the decrease reflects the positive impact of targeted intervention and policy enforcement. The area of concern is the tobacco and vaping incidents, which increased by 20%, which indicates a need for enhanced focus on anti-vaping education and prevention strategies. In conclusion, I believe that the data highlights a substantial overall improvement in student behavior, particularly in areas of attendance, respect, and safety. The continued emphasis on maintaining this progress alongside targeted efforts to address the rise in tobacco vaping incidents will support a positive school climate. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I will park my bus. Happy for any conversation, any dialogue at this time. Thank you, Chairman Jones.
Thank you. Questions?
I First, can you define the difference between attack on student and fighting?
Yeah, fighting, mutual combat, attack on students, someone hit,
Someone just hit you.
one-sided.
All right, same thing on the adult there. On the tobacco vaping, how much do you think the increase in that number is not more people vaping, but due to the detection technology that's been installed?
That is possible. That is absolutely possible, because, for example, what Dr. Temple is referring to, last academic year, we had the opportunity to pilot vape detectors at Calvert High School. We saw that it would be probably more of a proactive strategy by putting it in the middle schools. So it's the vape detectors are in the middle school, so what's possible, we're possibly detecting more vaping incidents in our middle school as well too.
These tobacco, are we talking cigarettes or dip or all the above?
All of the above. Even the vapes sometimes have a nicotine package inside of it, or even though that's not tobacco, but that's associated with cigarettes. So.
That's what I'm just trying to figure out, how much of it is vape pens and not, dip, right?
I would say
If the
about-
number's like 100 vape and then 5 dip, you know what I mean, or something like that. Do you happen to know the mix?
It's heavily, if not 90% vape.
Yeah, that's what I
It's these
figured.
pens that are shared around that are easy to consume.
I appreciate that. I'd also just note on the vaping, just if we all just take a step back and remember our own time in high school, people were smoking all over the place, right? Typically not at school because it was harder to hide because you smell and there's smoke and all the other stuff that goes with it. But I guess I just say that, I think the campaign is absolutely necessary to tell kids that this is dangerous,
Yeah.
for your health. But I wouldn't. It doesn't. I don't know how to put it the right way. I guess I'm not too surprised by it. They're kids,
Sure.
right? So I don't know. That doesn't devalue the need to have them stop, but it doesn't concern me as much. One more question, and y'all might be able to help me on the law enforcement side. Do we have to date the number of cases that have been referred to Department of Juvenile Services and the number of cases of actual physical arrests?
Absolutely. I do have an arrest report that I receive regularly. I didn't think it was necessary to share here, but more than happy, especially if the Board of Education wanted us to give that to this committee, I'd be more than happy to share that information. I will be happy to share that our arrests are woefully down compared to last year. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, the arrest report I received for the month of December, I believe it was maybe 4 or 5 district-wide, so it's that's significantly
Year to date?
Yeah. No, for the month.
For the month of December,
Yeah,
okay.
because young people, a lot of times, and we have a resource officer able to support, we take them to the resource officer, and sometimes young people, especially if you're 18, you gotta go, man. If you're disrupting the environment like that, I rather the tough love and then you learn on the back end, and if we need to, back up and be lenient after the fact, but we refer young people to the school resource officer as a last resort, and sometimes that happens, more often than not.
I'm just trying to get a sense of it, because the last report that the state put out was 2023 data. It was like
Okay.
161 or something like that. And most of those are just referrals to juvenile services, not physical arrests.
Yeah,
So I
would
was just
say
trying to
that
compare them
juvenile
over.
services, I think we only have 1 student in DJS. And I think it's important to share, Governor Westmore last year appointed me to serve as a member on the Juvenile Services Education Program. So I'm a voting board member on the Juvenile Services Education Program, which is a part of the Department of Juvenile Services at the state level. And I had the opportunity to most recently tour Cheltenham Detention Facility, which is closest to us in Prince George's County. And again, to date, we have 1 current student that's in the program.
And what I mean by the referrals is not physically incarcerated, but the typical, they got caught with marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
They were referred, DJS takes it, there's like a phone interview between the family and so they're not, that's what I meant by the DJS
But it's still
referral.
counted as arrest. It's still called.
It does, it does count it. It's different than the physical arrest. Yeah, I was just curious because I like to compare the numbers over time on those, because those are obviously the most serious cases we're talking about.
And I will share, I think it's important for this group to know, Calvert County Public Schools has the highest, or one of, if not the highest arrest rate of students in the state of Maryland. If you don't recall, Fox 45 did a story on arrest in Maryland, and we have, if I'm not mistaken, double Baltimore City. So we arrest at a high rate in Calvert County. And I don't say that to brag at all, that's just what the data suggests. We arrest more students than any other district in the state of Maryland.
Yeah, it's a concerning, concerning number.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
First of all, comment. Congratulations, these are very impressive increases in success.
Yes, sir, thank you.
What you're doing with your school visitations obviously is making a difference, so congratulations again.
Thank you.
Is there any reason why we don't see a category for illegal substances?
It's a catch-all, basically, but we can probably break all of that down by the referral of the young people.
Because I would imagine that when you look at that arrest rate, there's probably a decent percentage of students who are arrested that would fall in that category.
Yes, indeed. And I will share that when we look at our arrests in Calvert County, it's mostly drugs, and the other half is fighting.
Thank you.
Yep.
A quick follow-up question on the arrest. Do you have the suspension expulsion data for that period as well?
Absolutely, we have that.
Okay, is that something you can share?
If it doesn't violate anything, more than happy to share that data.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more follow-up. Again, thank you so much for this report. It's amazing. I heard you say that the governor appointed you to the Juvenile Services Education Program. Congratulations on that. And since I am sitting on the committee for a student with positive behavior, I would love to know what they're doing in that system
Yes.
that they have that could possibly, we could, marry some of that to our data points, or even some of the things that we're gonna be doing to create maybe a strategic plan on how we can get the community and the students involved in a campaign.
Yes, ma'am.
If they have any campaigns that they are already using that we can possibly marry to or attach ourselves to help create a better environment for Calvert County.
Yes, I can reach out to Superintendent Kimberly Pogue, who's the superintendent of Juvenile Services Education Program, and for sharing of resources with regards to the anti-vaping campaign.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And thank you again. This is an amazing report.
You're welcome.
Can I comment on the tobacco and vaping? During the first meeting that we had, there were several parents that actually made complaints that the juveniles did have a lot of access to tobacco. After that meeting, I got with Sergeant Krebs from the Sheriff's Office. They do actually a lot of proactive enforcement on that. We don't, but we did this time. I can tell you from the state police, we did 2 proactive operations. We went to 51 stores in Calvert for our compliance checks. 7 of those stores did fail. I know that the Sheriff's Office also did compliance checks. I don't have those stats, but I'd want to say every single store in Calvert County was checked, and this isn't a one-time thing. This happened several times throughout the year, and this will continue to happen, and we will also be involved in this as well. I spoke with Miss Tammy at the health department, who actually really educated me in this as well. So we are taking a stance on this. As I said, I wasn't aware of this issue, but now that we are, like I said, we work hand in hand with the Sheriff's Office, so it's very easy to set that thing up. And again, it will continue to happen.
Longer ago than I would like to admit, the sheriff and the state police were engaged in alcohol screening with local vendors, and it proved to be effective when there were fines and penalties.
Mhm.
Are there fines and penalties?
There are, yes. And I believe the first time offense is a $300 offense, second is $1,000, third is a $3,000 offense.
Are there any times in the offenses that the facility is closed?
No, I would have to get back with you on that one.
That
I'm
was the
not
most
sure.
effective process for curbing alcohol distribution to young folks, because the businesses literally had to close 2 or 3 days, and that got people's attention.
Yeah, during our last initiative, we had one offense that was a $3,000 offense, but that was their first. Well, I'm sorry, it was their third offense. If that makes sense to you. So, but I'm not sure if the health department actually shut them down. I would have to get back with you on that one, sir.
Yeah, I think, but part of the issue is that the community has to have teeth on compliance. If someone is willing to risk paying a $3,000 fine for a third offense, that simply means that they're making a business decision versus a compliance decision. And it seems to be that the fine is not enough to curtail the behavior. But
In the county, you have to get a liquor license to sell liquor, right? So that's
Right.
something that can be revoked. Right? Is there a similar type of licensing scheme for vapes, tobacco shops? Anybody know? I'm sure there's gotta be for dispensaries.
Dispensaries,
For
absolutely.
cannabis, there's gotta be,
Yeah.
but, and a lot of these are sold, well, they're in different spots, but that would be my question, is there a licensing scheme where they are licensed to sell tobacco and vape products? Cause that's where you get them, if you revoke their license to sell, they can't sell.
Suggestion that Tammy Halterman comes as a future subject matter expert.
I think that, and it probably goes greater than that, because the real question is that unless we get some discipline with this, perhaps what it needs is legislative authority that basically puts some teeth in the process of compliance checks. Right, you got the local liquor board to answer to, and that's why stores used to be closed when alcohol was more of an issue, because they would suspend your license for 3 days. And that generally meant, your market wasn't just limited by what you couldn't sell young folks, but by your total marketplace, which has a whole different impact. And people then make different types of business decisions. So, we can talk to Tammy Haldeman and others later. Any other questions? This conversation is becoming rich.
I had a question about the tobacco and the vaping increase. Do you think that also the staff is being more consistent in reporting and addressing it, rather than we had reports before that some people overlooked it? Do you think that you see a difference there as well?
100%. Shout out to our teachers for holding each other accountable. So, our philosophy, we don't turn a blind eye. I mean, for example, I shouldn't have to tell someone to take their hood off and he just walked past you and you didn't tell them to take their hood off. So that's the same approach with regards to reporting incidents like vaping. For example, I didn't put here because I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole. Our cell phone reports are up, but it's now banned this year. It wasn't in the past. Kids can have cell phones anytime. But because we're very intentional in pressing, I said hold them accountable for the cell phones. And again, walking through, for example, today, Huntingtown High School, a school with nearly 1,300 students, and I'm looking for phones. I walked in randomly and I can't find them. Now you'll see now when I'm looking at the sea of 1,300, I see, for 1 or 2 kids. I mean, kids are kids. They're still 9th grade, 10th grade, trying to get by. But for the most part, ladies and gentlemen, when you have 75 to 80% of your universal population doing what you're asking them to do, that is a good thing, because you can focus on those targeted individuals. That's why they call it a multi-tiered system of support. There's some young people that are going to be defiant. There's some young people that in some cases may not have the support at home to help us reinforce what we need at school. But I'm excited to see the frequency of incidents decreasing. So it's a testament to an all hands on deck approach with our teachers, administrators, behavior technicians. Even have seen a janitor respectfully and building service workers address culture and climate issues. And that's what we expect. If you're a staff member and that's the code of conduct for students, we expect you to address it. And if they don't comply with you, take it up the chain to ensure that we're enforcing. So yes, it is in a result, potentially a variable of being over or being intentional about identifying young people outside of our code of conduct.
I have a question regarding kind of other factors. So, you've given a number of factors that you think have contributed to this. And of course, kind of coming from a science background, I always think kind of correlation's not causation. So how do you then connect the dots and show the things that are actually having an impact? And of course, you mentioned some things, but I'm just wondering, in terms of other things that may be critical, our staffing levels, has there been a change over that same period? Are we, in a better position than we were a year ago? Have there been other major training initiatives that would be helpful for staff in terms of these issues as well? You mentioned classroom management, so are there other programs that have been rolling out over that time frame? Just trying to get a better sense of any other factors that might be related.
Sure, I think we're blessed in Calvert County, whereas we have teachers that stay for a long time, as well as administrators. So when you have longevity in positions, those systems are put in place and they maintain in place. That's how you have that culture. So we're privileged to have a consistent workforce and staff that's there on a daily basis. In Calvert County, we respectfully do not experience the same shortages of educators in large numbers compared to our neighboring districts. Because again, this is a family community. A lot of people come here specifically for the education program, including teachers. They come to educate and have their young people educated within the system.
Speaking of this issue from a standpoint of general wellness, if I may, what have these indicators done to cause us to rethink our curriculum or our approach to what we're sharing with young people instructionally? And going back to his part of causation and correlation, what impact, if any, I would assume that our health curriculum has started to address vaping and other things. So what else can we do from a standpoint of proactive instruction to change these behaviors?
Well, the good news is we have young people's attention. That's why you look at the class cutting, the disruption, the disrespect. The phones are away. So I attribute that to young people being more engaged with teachers and with each other with the relationships. But my expectation is that our academic scores will increase again this year because of the engagement of young people. We do maintain our same professional development schedule with regards to teaching and learning. So our instructional practices have not changed. And in the event that everyone's not familiar with Calvert County Public Schools achievement data, we're the 4th best school district in the state of Maryland this year with regards to how our young people are achieving on the MCAP assessment, a Maryland Standardized Assessment in English, 10th grade, we're #1 2 years consecutive. When you think of third and 5th grade mathematics, top 3. So our teachers are doing a phenomenal job in the classroom. Now, we're not perfect, far from it, and we have a lot of growing to do, but I do believe as a result of having a better climate and culture in our school, we'll continue to see increased academic achievement. My philosophy I share all the time with our staff is, as climate and culture goes, so goes curriculum and instruction, which is why I have a prediction that our student achievement data will increase again this year.
I have a quick question. Dr. Townsend, is it, I don't know if this is illegal to ask or not, but can we ask the students that you're visiting quarterly for the code of conduct meetings that you're having, how they feel? What is positive about you coming? Because it would inform us when we're trying to create some plans and campaigns, and what they like, what they don't like. I know because if these students are #1 in ELA, they should also be able to articulate to us what they want as well.
Absolutely. So I can share holistic data. So it's funny you say that, because when I went to Windy Hill Middle School today, the principal gave me some talking points about his school, and he gave me his most recent mid-year student climate survey. And I can tell you what those young people shared Windy Hill Middle School. It says, Windy Hill Middle School results from the mid-year student climate survey. And I promise you, this wasn't a planned question. This is in my jacket because the principal gave it to me after I left there with the Huntington. It says, this is what the young people shared. 82% of students feel safe at school. 91% of students understand the learning goals. 87% of students agree staff believe they can learn. 80% of students agree staff has high expectations for them. 70% of students check in with me to see how I'm doing, greet me at the door, show interest in my life outside of school. 72% of students agree Windy Hill Middle School staff care about them. At Windy Hill, discipline referrals are down 43% from last year. 332 discipline referrals in the first 4 months of last year, 190 referrals first 4 months of this year. First quarter failures are down 5% from last year. 11% of students had one or more failing grades this time last year. 6% of students have one or more failing grades at the same time compared to this year. And that's a snapshot of one of our middle schools. And I believe, by the grace of God, I mean, probably 90% of our schools probably have some similar style data because of the physical approach of the adults in the schools. Every month, multiple times, I have something called a CAPS meeting, like CAPS meeting. It's central office, administrators, principals, and supervisors. So any adult that leads young people or other adults in the system, I meet with them monthly. So we just had this meeting yesterday going over not only, you know, the X's and O's of the district, but talking student achievement and talking climate and culture. And because we're paying attention to it, I think we're gonna see positive results from it.
Just gotta follow up on that question. Are all the schools mandated to do such an assessment? A student survey?
Encourage, yes. I mean, it's not a
Policy?
yes, but every school does a climate survey. As a matter of fact, every school in Calvert County does a yearly climate survey.
For the
because
students?
Yes, for all students and staff.
What's the did they tell you the participation rate, or is it mandatory?
He didn't give me that. It's mandatory for students.
For students, okay.
Yeah, I would guess an over 90% participation rate. A lot of our because we supply them with their own laptops, so they do it all online.
It sounds like there's a process. That'd be awesome just to have it. Policy.
Absolutely.
We'll do this twice a year. Go with it, and then that would help collect the data you were speaking of. What are the students saying?
How many schools have already completed that? Do you know?
I didn't ask. I wasn't prepared for that.
Okay. Is there a way that we could get those for those
Absolutely. All I have to
subcommittees?
do is ask.
Okay,
and I
cool.
get it.
Okay. Any
Can I-
other questions?
I just want to chime in on one thing. It kind of backtracks, Guy, a little bit to your question, but one thing that kind of stood out in my mind is this is one of the few years where I don't feel like there were a lot of new initiatives. That I feel like most of the things, that kind of goes with what Dr. Townsend was saying with the turnover, but also with turnover of initiatives. We have some things that have been in place for a while and seem to be working. And then I won't call out anybody in particular because I don't want to draw interest to who has moved away, but there were some really, really great administrative moves as far as some of the principal positions that Dr. Townsend nominated this year, and I think we're seeing some improvements in a few of those schools that really needed some extra support. So I'm happy to talk about that off air, but certainly I think we're seeing a much better climate in some of those places where we had some bigger issues.
And you know what, I'll just piggyback off of that. Mr. Oates is the president of the Teacher Association, the Calvert Education Association. And what I noticed from my monthly meeting with the union, is the incidents that we talk about today are really pedagogical. It's not a lot of the behavior stuff like it was in my first year and a half, 2 years being here. I mean, but we've been very also intentional about addressing behavior. When I first got here, I would get calls and emails from the county commissioners about student behavior. I'm like, I gotta get in front of this, you know? And the good news is we're seeing the frequency of those are just shrinking. I mean, I'm in my 3rd year now, and the data, by the grace of God, I'm happy. I think it's trending in the right direction, not only academically, but also with young people's behavior. And even if our resource officer may want to chime in on, you know, what they see in the schools, if they're, you know, getting a lot more or a lot less, you know, incidents, I think that would add value, because I don't want myself to seem biased because I'm the superintendent, so I'm just gonna talk all positive. But Jay-Z said men lie, women lie, the numbers don't, so I'm just looking at the numbers right now.
All right. One other question I had that is really non-related to your report, and I join those who are commending the school system for the improvements. But historically, this district has had great numbers statistically in achievement on both ends, on the elementary and on the high school numbers. But middle school, we seem to be swimming upstream a lot. What are we looking like now in middle school?
I feel good with our middle school, and I'll just say, education, K-12, sixth grade is the toughest grade to transition into. Even when I was a high school principal in Massachusetts, I always had to, young people coming out of middle school, that ninth grade is super vulnerable. So I feel positive about our middle school this year. As a matter of fact, I know I hired 2 new middle school principals this academic year. And the current principal, we have a strong principal at Calvert Middle School, strong principal at Windy Hill, strong principal at Northern, which was a change. It's a new principal at, not North, I'm thinking Mount Harmony, because my daughter goes there. So we had 2 middle school hires, Southern Middle School principal and Plum Point Middle School. So I'm encouraged to see what happens there with regards to data. But just in general, middle school is tough everywhere. Everywhere, middle school is very hard to engage those 6th graders, and then keeping those 7th graders on track. Your most mature group is that 8th grade group, because they're the seniors of the school, and they're going off into high school. But those middle years, and I'm dealing with it now. My son is in 7th grade, and he'll be 13 next month, and I'm looking like it's changing right in front of my eyes. It's just a challenging age group.
No question, a challenging age group, but also a very influential age group. And so a lot of what we are trying to avoid in the high schools, we need to try to alter behavior in the middle schools. So, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Is there any data other than what has been asked for so far that Dr. Townsend can provide us that will help us in that journey?
I mentioned earlier the suspension and expulsion data would be helpful.
Climate survey, the one that more, yep.
Particularly the family, the input that the families give, because it's available for staff, students, and for families as well. So I think the family part would be, if you could share that, that would be great to see too.
You know what, I'll just give this anecdote. This academic year, and maybe Trustee Grennis can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't recall this year at any school board meetings, any parental complaints, publicly. I mean, in the past, they would have come to the mic and say what the grievance is. I believe the most recent school grievance I received was because we have, it's a substitute at an elementary school who's just a young person. As you know, it's a critical shortage of substitutes. So finding substitute teachers, especially if someone is on maternity, it's very difficult to do. And that went to the commissioners, that came to me. But beyond that, I'm super proud of our teachers because they're pushing forward, and then this is a tough year, especially talk about budget, and then I'm working on fiscal 26 budget, and talking about possible cuts. That is not easy to do, to keep the morale up when you're talking about losing funding. So super proud of our teachers, and we're gonna keep fighting and pushing forward. And any suggestions or recommendations that come from this group, I will always take back to my team and see what's possible, and be happy to report back.
Okay. Anything else? Sir, thank you.
Yes, sir.
This has been helpful, and I applaud you and your team for the progress that's being made, and we certainly want to be an asset in terms of our work in moving forward.
Yes, sir.
Tammy is here. and I just wanted to acknowledge
Hi.
that she's here with us. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Just fine, just fine. We will be following up with you in the future.
Okay.
So that we may hear the other end, particularly as it pertains to licensing and compliance with regard to these shops.
Okay.
They are.
Yeah, I understand there were some questions about citations or fines that were related to the vape shops.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, there, any failed tobacco retailer, their first offense, they get a $300 fine. Their second offense is $1,000. Their third offense is a $3,000 fine. They do get sent after the second offense to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission for review whether their license gets suspended or not.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. Let's go to our next item. And Emily, you want to lead us through this part?
Good afternoon, committee members. So this particular item on the agenda is to go over the subcommittee placements as well as kind of matching the phases that we developed with the deliverables that will happen between now and the end of the life of the committee. So first and foremost, based on the feedback that you all provided on what subcommittees you would be preferred to be placed on, as well as your own personal expertise and what everybody brings to the table, these are the placements that have been finalized for all of the subcommittees. So if you don't see your name on here, let me know, but this should encompass our group. And keep in mind, ex officio members on the side of the table are here to act as a resource for these subcommittees, so you'll notice that they are not placed in any of these groups. So to begin the subcommittee work, all 3 to 2 of the members on the subcommittees are going to be working towards reaching their common goal of pulling together all of these deliverables. But we are asking subcommittee members to kind of put themselves in certain positions in order to make sure everybody has a stake in the subcommittee's work. So we will ask members following the end of the meeting to discuss amongst one another whether they'd like to be the subcommittee lead, the secretary, or the research lead. Essentially, the subcommittee lead will be responsible for organizing your meetings, setting agendas, representing the committee during presentations, and making sure that all the objectives and deliverables are met on time. The secretary will be responsible for making sure that all of the notes are organized, maintaining the records for the committee or the subcommittee, and preparing monthly action reports, which essentially will be asking subcommittees to develop and present a monthly action report from here on out following at the main committee meetings. The final role is the research lead, which will be asking them to be the primary researchers. They'll present findings based on their subcommittee areas, and they'll coordinate with staff to get any data that is needed. So kind of going back to the phases that were developed in the last couple of months, we developed some deliverables that the subcommittees will be working on in the next few months to kind of move the committee's goals along as a whole. So for phase 2, phase 1 is complete because that was actually forming the committee, so that's why you don't see that on here. But we're currently in phase 2. We've been working on phase 2 since our first meeting in October to identify issues and data. We had our brainstorming session. We had Dr. Townsend come speak. We're asking the subcommittees, their first task will be to pull together a list of individuals and groups they feel should come before the committee during their open meetings to provide testimony or presentation education data. So for example, we mentioned Tammy today. Tammy could be on that list, and just any others that you are hoping to have speak to the whole committee. We're asking subcommittees to provide this list to us by the end of January, so we can start building out the next few months of our agenda. The next phase, which we will be entering starting at the end of this month, is our issue and data assessment phase, which is really, I think, where a lot of the work will lie in kind of combing through all this data that you're requesting and making sense of it and identifying challenges that lie in the current student safety and wellness atmosphere. So we'll be asking subcommittees to prepare relevant questions in advance for our scheduled speakers, analyze existing policies and practices that are in place pertaining to your subcommittee area, and you'll consult with staff to find subject matter experts to obtain additional data. And for the deliverables in this phase, we will be having our subcommittee submit a data assessment report. So essentially, all of your subcommittees have different areas that we identified on those ideal outcomes a couple of meetings ago. So you'll submit a report of existing policy and practices pertaining to your areas to identify areas of improvement. This is kind of like the what are the current challenges, and this is kind of the point A of the committee's work. So phase 4 is the defining measurable short and long-term goals. This is kind of us trying to make sense of point B. So where, based on these challenges that you found in your data assessment reports, where do you think that we should be setting goals for where the school system, for community partners and agencies, where should that be? And so in this phase, you will be using your data assessment report as a guide to set goals, including quick wins that would improve the safety and well-being areas in Calvert schools. So in this phase, we'll be asking subcommittees to develop a goal development report. So you'll submit goals based on the issues and data assessments. And like the data assessment report, you will be presenting, the leads will be presenting a presentation to the whole committee. And then phase 5 is to develop recommendations, which is really, we're leading up to the main point of why this committee was made, to develop recommendations to the school systems, community agencies. So this is kind of connecting point A and B. So we've identified these challenges. We identified where we want to be or where, the school should be. So this is the recommendations of how we're going to get from point A to point B. So this is where subcommittees will draft policy and practice recommendations for agencies to meet proposed goals. They'll gather relevant resources. So one of the things that we want subcommittees to do is gather resources for students, parents, community agencies, administrators, teachers, etc., to kind of assist them with their subcommittee area. So that will be one of them. And finally, this phase, you'll identify what metrics the school system, what data they should be tracking going forward. So the final deliverable will be a subcommittee recommendation report where they will submit recommendations for CCPS, community agencies, on what metrics and data should be tracked in the future, as well as creating a resource inventory. And then our final phase is to deliver the final report, which is kind of the final stretch of what this committee will be doing. So subcommittees, based on all of the work that they have done in the last few months, will work with us staff to format a final report to give to the Board of County Commissioners and any other stakeholders in the community that wish to receive that. So with that, does anyone have any questions about where we are, where we're going, how this will all work?
I'd like to share a couple of other points that I want to address. I understand that we have one member who may want to look at another subcommittee, please see me after this meeting. But in addition to that, I want to say that we tried very hard to get you either your first or your second choice. And I think you'll find that in most cases that's what we got. We responded to what you said your interest level was, and subsequently we were able to basically comply with your request. But beyond that, I want to remind you that the action of the body is what will produce, and when I say the body, I mean the whole, is what will produce the final report. The subcommittee's job is to go in the weeds a little deeper than we will be going in this setting, and to recommend those who should come before the whole that may have an influence on what our recommendations are. So we will continue to use the subcommittee process to work through it, but our actions will be group actions of the whole. And the purpose of the monthly report, quite honestly, is to make sure, A, that we are tracking and trending according to our schedule. Secondly, to see where there are opportunities for collaboration among the subcommittees. And it will be with the subcommittee's leads, and myself and Leslie. We will do it virtually. We will not take up a lot of your time, but our goal is to try to make sure that we are all trending in the same direction, and where we need to share resources or share opportunities for exposure to presenters or whatever, that we work collaboratively so that we don't end up with, as I use sometimes the term, herding cats, that in fact we are all in sync and we're moving collectively together so that we can focus on the end result. Any other questions?
I would also like to address that for the monthly action report and all the other deliverable reports that you see on here, staff will be working in collaboration with leadership to develop templates for all of the subcommittees, so you won't just be going in blind and making these reports. We will gladly provide those templates and be of assistance to help you develop those deliverables.
And always start with the end in mind. And so the report is going to be reflective of that.
Also, the dates that you see here are estimated dates. I don't know how long in practice that it will take the subcommittees and the committee as a whole to work through all these deliverables. Obviously, this is a very tall order to navigate all of this, so these are very much subject to change based on what the committee is, feeling at the time.
Any questions? Okay. Next slide. We've reached the point of public comment. I remind individuals who are present who wish to comment, whether online or who are present with us today. 2 minutes for individuals, 5 minutes for organizations. When you identify yourself, please identify yourself either as an organization or a representative or as an individual. So with that in mind, do we have any persons online?
If you're online, please raise your hand to lead public comment. I'll open it up one more time for public comment online. Please use the raise your hand function to lead public comment. No one online, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a member of the audience present who would like to comment. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Hill, and thank you all for giving me this moment. I'd like to say thank you, first of all, on our first meeting, or your first meeting. I brought up the tobacco issues, and my comment was that unless we have a community together, working together, we would not be able to fight this issue with our children and our minorities or students at the schools. I did point out that unless our sheriff's departments and our state police would not work with us, it would be a losing battle, and I was thrilled when 2 days later I got a phone call from a store manager saying, hey, do you know anything about what's going on? And I was really impressed, and then later heard that same week from the Department of Health that you were actively going to each of the vape stores and each of the Walmart, Wawa's, 7-Elevens, and checking, and parents were noticing. Which leads me to, I personally put out on a social media page a question about, or to parents about tobacco and vaping. It's not just parents that aren't in your demographics or your age group or it was teachers who were parents, it was medical personnel who were parents, were all concerned that they don't have support in stopping their children from vaping and smoking as well. I had 152 comments on that social media page just asking. It was a badass mom page, excuse me, but they were very willing to talk. Several did. I had 152 right on the post. I had probably half, maybe another 50 send me private messages, including some faculty members saying, we don't have support. We don't know what to do. I, at that point, reached out to Dr. Townsend and offered to be a volunteer. I am not a leader, but I would like to volunteer in any way I can help you or assist you or yourself in reaching out to the public, because if we don't get the parents more on board, we're going to not fulfill the goal. It's a serious problem, and I really think it's something that Mr. Dino, you in your presentation brought up some points to it and how we could address it, and I was very impressed. So how do we reach out and do more? Please, I'm willing to volunteer and help. I know that there are other parents who must be willing to want to help. So if you would be willing to reach out to them, I also ask you, because I brought up the tobacco and the vape on the first meeting, I'm also going to ask you, as our leaders looking out for the students, to now educate yourself also about the human trafficking. I went to a panel discussion on Sunday where there was state and sheriff's office and some from the National Children's Human Trafficking. Human trafficking does not just necessarily involve sexual trafficking, but it also involves workers. So some of our kids are in work environments and they're being misused in some ways. We need to work together, and I ask you to become educated on that, or at least invite some of those panelists that were Sunday here in our community. Kat Marsh is someone who I highly recommend. She's very educated on this. Please, I just ask you to learn a little bit about it. It was something I was ignorant about, and I'm really concerned. The leading age group for human trafficking is 11 to 15 years old. We are in the hubbub, being in the DC metropolitan area, DC, Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, DC, sorry. And the more airports we have, the higher the trafficking is. Please, that's all I'm asking, is for you to learn about that as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Have we have anybody to respond on the line?
No one online.
Okay. Are there any issues that we have not covered that need to be brought before this board at this time? There being none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Before we vote, I want to remind you, we're asking you to quickly assemble and identify your roles in your subcommittees and perhaps your next steps with regard to moving forward. Share that information with Emily so we know who we're talking to. Any discussion about this adjournment? There being none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Just a reminder, the next regular meeting is February the 19th. Please do not forget the evening listening session on the 29th. Thank you for your time, your attention.